Our state has set an ambitious goal to become one of the top-performing education systems in the nation by 2030. But our 15-year-old school funding formula wasn't designed to get us there, and every year we delay reform, we leave more students behind. In 2025, the Rhode Island Foundation convened a Blue Ribbon Commission on Education Funding and spent the year examining Rhode Island's system from every angle. We brought together stakeholders who are sometimes at odds: teachers and superintendents, charter and district school leaders, municipal officials, and community advocates, and asked them to build consensus around an updated funding system that puts the focus on kids in the classroom and on real fiscal accountability to ensure student success. And they did. It was a team effort, and we're grateful to them for putting in the time, raising hard questions, and engaging across differences. The Commission's recommendations represent genuine consensus across traditional divides. With the help of the team at the Annenberg Institute at Brown University, we've done the research, examined the evidence, and built a roadmap of recommendations that draw on lessons learned from across the country: California's accountability framework, Connecticut's local share requirements, and Michigan's support for multilingual learners. We've studied what's working nationwide and tailored it to Rhode Island. Rhode Island's current funding formula falls short of giving students the support they deserve. It fails to cover basic costs, like getting students to school and maintaining safe buildings. That forces districts to make impossible choices between fixing leaky roofs and hiring reading specialists. It fails to acknowledge that different students have different needs and generate different costs. It leaves districts scrambling to cover unexpected costs, taking time away from what matters most: teaching and learning. And critically, it offers no mechanism to ensure that dollars translate into better performance. The Commission's recommendations aim to address these challenges. Here are the details.
The Commission built the recommendations around a shared vision and principles that would guide a new education funding system for Rhode Island. They determined that the system should be sufficient. The state should adequately support public education. Student-centered. Funding should reflect what it actually costs to educate each child. Comprehensive. All costs of education should be included, not just some. Predictable and flexible. Budgets should be stable, yet responsive to change. Transparent and timely. Stakeholders should be able to understand how funding works, and state-level school funding timelines should align with municipal and district budget processes. Equitable fiscal burden. Local contributions should align with each municipality's capacity to pay, and there should be equity both among municipalities and between municipalities and the state. And lastly, accountability. Increased funding should be accompanied by efficiency and accountability mechanisms. The work of the Commission resulted in a consensus vision rooted in national best practices and Rhode Island realities. Every Commission member, despite competing interests and different perspectives, stands behind these recommendations. That's remarkable, and it's a testament to the rigor of their process and the strength of their recommendations. The Commission recommends a new interconnected funding system that clarifies and redistributes the cost of education, not a list of discrete suggestions to choose from. The system works as a whole. The Commission has laid out 4 specific recommendations. First, account for the full cost of education and share costs more equitably. Right now, education costs are covered in 3 ways, broadly speaking. State-covered cost includes contributions to high-cost special education and other categorical funding outside of the school funding formula. Shared costs include the current funding formula, but the current formula is based on a narrow core instructional amount, which covers primarily teacher salaries and instructional materials. Some other costs which are not included in the current funding formula, like teacher retirement costs and out-of-district transportation, are also shared, but in ways that are less predictable. Currently, many costs that districts must pay, including transportation to their schools and building maintenance, are absorbed entirely by municipalities outside of the formula, resulting in substantial costs for municipalities. The Youth Working Group, convened by the Commission, was surprised and concerned to learn about the limited scope of the current funding formula. They urged the Blue Ribbon Commission to recommend a formula that includes all of the costs involved in educating students, including transportation. The Commission recommends replacing the more limited core instructional amount with a broader core education amount that includes costs like in-district transportation and building maintenance. This change ensures that the basis of the funding system reflects the true cost of education. The Commission also recommends moving certain high-cost, unpredictable expenses entirely to the state. These include high-cost special education, defined as services that cost more than 4 times the cost to educate a typical student, legacy teacher pension debt, out-of-district transportation, and early childhood screening. The proposal moves many local costs that districts absorb into the core education amount, or the funding formula, where they are shared by the state and local communities. It also moves several large, unpredictable expenses entirely to the state. By doing so, the proposed system provides greater predictability and stability to districts and municipalities. Right now, if a student who receives expensive special education services moves into a district mid-year, the district would struggle to absorb unexpected costs. Under the proposed system, the state would cover those costs and have the negotiating power to control them at scale. The Commission's second recommendation is to tailor instructional costs more directly to student needs. Different students have different needs, and therefore different costs associated with their education. A student learning English as a second language needs different resources than a student whose first language is English. A student with learning differences needs greater support than a typical learner. A student in an advanced manufacturing program needs different equipment than one engaged in the standard curriculum. The new system recognizes this reality with tiered weights. The student success factor for economically disadvantaged students increases from 40% to 50% to better align with best practices in other states. And for the first time, the Commission is recommending tiered weights for multilingual learners, students with disabilities, and students in high-cost career and technical education, or CTE programs. Students receiving services and participating in higher-cost programs will receive additional funding, corresponding to the cost of the services and programs. By tiering these weights, the Commission ensures that a student who is new to the country and in an intensive language program receives more funding than a student who is exiting the program, because that's the reality of what they need. Similarly, a student participating in a CTE program that requires more expensive equipment would be funded appropriately. The student success factor, together with these tiered instructional program factors, ensure that instructional costs are tailored to student needs. These changes to the distribution of costs aims to provide equitable funding for all students in all schools. Under the current funding formula, there are differential costs borne by traditional schools and charter schools. These cost differences are later accounted for through a system of charter school holdbacks, where a portion of the funding for charter school students is withheld. These holdbacks are eliminated in the Commission's proposed system because the state will now cover unpredictable and variable costs like high-cost special education and legacy pension debt that has resulted in differential costs between traditional and charter schools. Whether a student attends a traditional public school or a public charter school, they deserve the same funding. The Commission purposefully did not take a position or make policy statements about charter schools. However, they did determine that students in public charter schools deserve equal treatment in the funding system. The Commission's third recommendation is to ensure greater predictability for municipalities with a required local share. Rhode Island is one of the only states in the nation where municipalities are not required to make a local financial contribution to adequately support public schools. Currently, the formula determines what it costs to educate a student and sets state and local shares based on local ability to pay. But the state does not require municipalities to pay their local share. As a result, some students are fully funded while others are not, depending on where they live. The new system flips this. The funding formula determines what it costs to educate a student. Municipalities must pay their required share first. Then the state fills the gap. Every child in every community gets fully funded. To ensure everyone is paying their fair share, local ability to pay is determined by one simple, transparent measure: the assessed value of residential and commercial property, reflecting what a community can afford to contribute. This creates equal treatment and equal burden sharing across the state. Even with local share becoming a requirement, under these recommendations, most municipalities would see local costs decrease once the core education amount is expanded, and expenses that currently sit outside the formula are shifted to the state. The fourth and final recommendation focuses on increased transparency, strategic management, and accountability that ties funding to educational outcomes. More money isn't enough. Stakeholders need to know if it's making a difference. The Commission recommends several measures to support this goal. First, to address the problem of complex, opaque, and sometimes poorly managed budgets, the Commission recommends that the Rhode Island Department of Education provide districts with support in budgeting and financial planning. This would also support more consistent use of the Uniform Chart of Accounts, so we can compare spending across communities and facilitate more regular public reporting. Annual public presentations linking spending to student outcomes will allow all stakeholders, including taxpayers, students, and families, to hold district leaders and public officials accountable for spending decisions and to monitor student improvements against spending decisions. The Commission recommends a system of tiered supports and consequences when districts are not making intended progress. For example, if a district is investing heavily in multilingual learner programs but not seeing results, collaborative planning could be required. If problems persist, oversight increases. And only as a last resort, after all intervention attempts, would state control happen. In the Commission's proposal, an independent Fiscal Responsibility Board governs this process, not RIDE alone, but a group representative of all stakeholders. In summary, the Commission recommends a student-centered system that fully accounts for the cost of education. Using a weighted formula, it would send more state dollars to school districts to match the educational needs of economically disadvantaged students, multilingual learners, and students with disabilities. The system would properly support high-cost career and technical education programs that are preparing future industry leaders in Rhode Island. The state would assume responsibility for unpredictable expenses, like high-cost special education services, that currently force districts into crisis budgeting mode and limit their ability to drive outcomes. This proposal restructures how educational costs are shared between state and municipal governments. It makes current expenses transparent rather than hidden. The requirement that municipalities fund education based on their property wealth ensures that everyone pays their fair share. The proposed system includes robust accountability measures that create both financial transparency and improved outcomes, addressing taxpayers' legitimate concerns about funding school systems they don't trust to use dollars effectively. And by relying more on tax structures at the state level, the new system creates the opportunity for local property tax relief, while also removing some of the budget volatility that undermines local planning. Together, the Commission presents this comprehensive system to adequately and equitably fund all Rhode Island students, to facilitate more directed, efficient, and effective use of resources, and to drive toward the shared goal of advancing educational excellence in Rhode Island. To read the full report and see how the recommendations may impact your community, visit www.rifoundation.org/fairfunding.
The Commission's recommendations have been used to draft a piece of legislation for the Rhode Island General Assembly to consider. This system could be enacted with legislative action now, and an implementation timeline of 2 to 4 years could be set. That would give the state and local communities time to prepare, time to transition, time to adjust budgets. Because here's the reality. Every year we wait is another group of young people who aren't being funded properly. Another year of inequity, another year of hidden costs and political maneuvering instead of transparent, fair allocation. This is about more than budgets and formulas. It's about what we value. It's about whether we believe every child in Rhode Island deserves the same quality of education, regardless of their zip code. It's about whether we can have an honest conversation about what education actually costs and who should pay for it. It's about creating a system that's predictable for municipalities, transparent for taxpayers, and fair for students. The Commission didn't ask, what should education cost? They asked, what does it cost? And how do we share that cost in a way that's equitable, affordable, and sustainable? We believe those answers are in these recommendations. Education isn't just a moral imperative, it's an economic necessity. A well-educated workforce drives prosperity. Every day we operate under the current funding system, we're not spending tax dollars efficiently, and we're limiting our children's potential. All of Rhode Island's public school students and educators stand to benefit from this new system. Now is the time to adopt this comprehensive, effective, and efficient funding system. Our children are watching, and our economic future depends on the choices we make. Let's choose equity. Let's choose transparency. Let's choose a future where every student in Rhode Island gets the education they deserve, regardless of zip code. To read the full report and see how the recommendations may impact your community, visit rifoundation.org/fairfunding.